Alright, so once you're done with that, I would just use the same colors you already have on your palette. So I got plenty of white, I got plenty of black, I have my mixed color. The one thing I didn't do is I didn't leave pure white. So I'm going to try to do this with the pure white right here. But it might not work out. You are going to want to have pure white. So transition, premix at least 3 tints, paint a gradually fading transition from white to tint to the hue. So what does that mean? It means I need 3 of these hues, tints, already mixed up, and they need to go from lighter to darker. So I can see in my mixtures right here, I have a light version of this, I kind of have a medium, and I'm going to have one more tint here that is a little bit darker. It has more of the hue in it. So I have 3 tints mixed up. They're only mixed with white. I don't have any black in it. And now I'm going to completely rinse out my brush, and I am going to paint. You have to work quickly on this, and you have to work with wet paint. And you're going to have that paint overlap each other, and when it overlaps, then it's going to transition or fade. So I'm drying off my brush. I'm going to take only white paint. I was able to do it. And start with white. Now I do use a lot more paint than normally because it's gonna dry really fast if I put a thin coating, so I want it a little bit thicker. So I painted that just white. Now I'm going to get the first tint on my brush. Again, I want plenty of paint. I'm going to paint it right next to it. And then, in order to get it to fade into the white, I wiped off a little bit of that paint because I had too much. I'm going to go back on top of the white. I have to wipe off my brush even more. And I'm going to use what is on my brush to help mix in between those two values. You could go sideways too. So because there was a lot of paint left there and I overlapped light paint onto the white and it was still wet, it blended. So now I have to work quickly before this dries. So I'm getting my next tint on here. And then I'm going to paint back over. Again, if that doesn't start to blend, I'm going to grab the other tint and I'm going to paint it back into the darker tint. Okay, then my third tint, and then I paint back on top of the lighter tint. If it doesn't blend, wipe off my brush, grab that lighter color, and then do this. So the mixing of the transition has to happen on the paper. And if I don't have enough paint there, and if it's not wet, it will not fade into the lighter color. So if I have a stripe there that's between the two values, I'm going to work back and forth, and since it's still wet, it should blend. Now the very last thing is I want this to fade into just the hue, so I have to grab that, paint it right here, and then this is dried already, even though I was trying to work fast. So I have to grab some of that lighter hue, kind of work back and forth in here. Only work with wet paint. If you try to come back with just a brush, it's going to thin it out too much. So there's my transition, white, tint, 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 just a hue. You're going to make a transition of at least 3 shades. Paint a gradually fading transition from your hue, so that's just pure blue-violet, from a shade until it gets to black. So that is your third worksheet. It is probably the most challenging of the three worksheets because you are trying to get these gradually fading transitions, and it doesn't happen the first time all the time. So you have to go back and add more wet paint. Have fun!